There you go. So now you can check out if you don't want to be recorded.
So I put a link to the Google Docs for the meeting notes and the agenda. So and I'm letting anyone edit. So if you want to go in there and like help take notes or
right,
or put.
Where did you post it, Leon? In the
Zoom chat.
Oh, the chat.
In the chat.
Okay. I see. Okay, I'll click on that. Yeah, so I just updated and I see you copied that over the agenda this morning, best I could. So I guess I'll sort of try to stick to the agenda. So I'll start off by saying hi to Megan, who is now on board on the team. And since not everybody was involved in the search, maybe Megan can spend a minute or two to talk about herself, who she is, where you are.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So as Paul mentioned, I'm Megan. I have a PhD in geological oceanography from the joint program between the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. My dissertation was focused on understanding submarine volcanic processes. Since defending in 2019, I've worked as an oceanographer for the US Navy and as a research associate for the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in their deep submergence laboratory. I started this week as a postdoc with Paul at the University of Hawaii. I've been a really enthusiastic GMT user for many years, and I really appreciate all the effort that's gone into developing and maintaining the program. And I'm really excited to join the development team from here on out.
Yeah, great, welcome. And Megan is in New York City, I guess, and we'll be there for a foreseeable future. So we shipped an iMac Pro to her, and it's being locked down. Hopefully it won't be stolen. So there's all sort of new things, you know, sending UH equipment around the world. There's no protocol for some of these things. So it's all good, it's all fun. So let's see, so yeah, so I gave Megan sort of task of trying to figure out all the aspects of GMT to just sort of get a handle on things. You know, we have the repos, we have the various wrappers, there's web pages, there's all kinds of stuff to sort of get, you know, in the building and getting into, you know, installing stuff and things. So that's sort of where she's at, and then we'll get more direction once we get to that point, and there are tasks that we need to complete. So that's great. So I thought I'll just say a few things, you know, I try not to ramble on too long, and just please bring up the no rambling flag when you see that coming, because it happens. Just 6.2 status. So I finished, it's a branch right now, but I finished the 3D grids implementation, meaning that we can pass 3D data cubes back and forth, because there's only 2 modules to do this. GreenSpline can create a 3D grid, and Grid Interpolate can read a 3D grid and slice and stuff. But it's now one more container that we can deal with. And I wanted to do that because we do want to be able to write a actual 3D NetCDF grid file, a single file. So it still doesn't do that. It cheats and writes a bunch of slices, 2D grids. But at least now it's all implemented in functions, so I can just work on that function. And Joachim has some experience in writing 3D NetCDF grids. So I would like to get that done before 6.2 comes out, meaning I'll try to do this the next couple of weeks. GoScripts have changed how they do transparency, and now we get a nasty warning that prints out every time you run something with transparency in 9.53.3. So I made the first cut of changing how we do it yesterday, and we immediately either run into a bug in GoScript or we need to do a little deeper dive. So using the new method didn't seem to work 100%. So I'll try to isolate that, and I'm suspecting, because we've had this saga going on for years, that GoScript has bugs in their various things we need, and they have I'd say 50% success ratio fixing problems. So hopefully it's not a bug. Hopefully it's just something I forgot to do, but it looked like there's a bug in that. There's been lots of smaller items, and I've forgotten many of them. They're sort of blurry, you know, you get a bug report, deal with it right away, we found some problems in the scientific column map that we had ingested from Fabio. And
just about the GoScript.
Yep.
It's not annoying the users on Windows, because I find it so annoying that I shut it up, because since I I compile it from source. On Windows, it is not. But of course, it's a threat for the future. It's nothing that worry in this.
No, it works still.
Not probably 1 year. We still have 1 year of being annoyed. But on Windows, it's not annoying because I just connected.
That's good. Yeah, that's true. It's not going to change overnight.
I did not know how to do it. Did a couple of trials and I managed to shut it up. So if you don't see it, when you don't see it on Windows, it's because I was annoyed enough to shut it up.
You have the power. Yeah, I guess we're stuck with the distros. They'll have that nasty message. I saw them for the first time yesterday. I guess I updated to the latest GhostScript and kept printing them out. All right, so we talked about this last time, when should we release 6.2, and that's sort of always a moving thing. We didn't want to do it too close to AGU for historical reasons, I guess. We don't want to drop something that could have issues just before AGU. AGU is coming up very quickly, so I'm thinking we're not going to release 6.2 the next week or two, because we need to wrap up a few things first, I think. So, and we'll get to this. We're going to talk about the GMT themes, which I really think we should get in before we release. So I think we're looking at the January something earliest release for 6.2. NASA proposal. The good thing was an optional. Yeah, sorry.
Well, it's not in the agenda. Well, you saw the PR that I made today.
Yes.
But it was previous agenda. That's something that also we are dragging a lot. Is a decision about those or OGR in datasets. We don't need to implement them,
right,
but would be good to have them foreseen. I don't know. There is an issue. I dug it up. It is.
Yeah.
Should have it here. I lost it already. Okay, there was an issue that we already in one discussion about these things, the fields and geofields that must go in OGR. That is something that would be good to have before 6.2. Not implementations, but at least that we have because if we change things later, we do it the worst. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you and I should have a look at that together, maybe, and see if we can push that to complete.
Well, stupid. Well, it doesn't matter because you would need to open it. But there we have an issue, a quite old one, that already discussed that, and we already have discussed that in one of the meetings, and then it was.
Yeah. Dropped. Yeah, that's true. That comes in a bit later on with the issues that we have so many issues that we losing a little bit track of what's outstanding. At least I'm starting to not remember what the issues are without having to go through a very long list and finding things. So yeah, so that's okay. So we added that there. We should look at that. I agree with that. But just back to the NSF and the NASA proposal. The good thing there was an optional notice that was the intent that was due today, not a required. Because we did those things a couple of times, Leo and I. But they were kind of more required, but this one doesn't have a requirement of telling them that we're going to propose. So I guess that's why I didn't put a deadline in for that. But it's coming up in January 19th, and I think we should try to have the text and all that stuff and retrofit the proposal we had by the end of this year. So we have some time to deal with holiday issues and getting it through the Inspires and the UH system and all that stuff. And we're gonna, Megan needs to be nominated for affiliate faculty in my department to be a PI or co-PI on this thing. That's gonna happen the next faculty meeting, so there's all these little silly steps we gotta do. But I'm thinking that I should pull out that proposal and read carefully the NASA guidelines, because they're very specific what they want to see. And if we miss one of the things they want to see, that's that they count these things, right? It's like really, they have a scoreboard, much more than an NSF proposal, where it's sort of, you read the whole thing and yeah, it's a pretty good proposal. And here they will say, did they address this point? No. Did they address this point? Not good. Those things are killers. So we have to make sure when we review this proposal, that we really read what they are asking us to provide in terms of information and make sure we address those things. And most of them are not hard, but we just have to make sure we sort of specifically address things. So I think I'll probably take a first crack on that and send that out for all of you to look at. Yeah, so the issues, I mean, that's related to what Joachim brought up. You know, I'm counting 176 open issues, and that's passing my capacity to remember them by a while ago now. Meaning that, you know, there's stuff that lingering back at, you know, issue number 11 that either should be dealt with or deleted or something. It's just clearly it's not either not important to us or anyone, or it's not well posed, or it's a thing we can't deal with. So it's just cluttering up everything, I think. So I'm not sure what the best solution is. I mean, I will go and try to prune. Okay, Leo, you have a suggestion?
So I've seen some other projects who suffer from the same thing. What they'll do is they'll have like a week or a month where they just focus on triage of issues and pull requests. So like the goal is to close as many issues as they can within a month. So then they kind of try to shift all their focus to that, and then they just do it or that week or something. So this might be a good thing to do as like a GMT hack week or something like that.
Right. Yeah, I'm all for that, because I think we want that number down so it's manageable. And so, you know, there's more important issues that are live, basically, not dormant and dead and all that stuff. So maybe you know, everybody can look at those issues. They're created by all kinds of people, not just me, mostly not me, I guess. Or some of them are mine. But I'll certainly look at the ones I posted in the past and see if, you know, are they still relevant, or can I refresh it or rephrase or delete and re-add? Because some of them are just probably expired. They have fixed something.
But it is also a question of the organization of GitHub. They call issues what to a very large broad of things. So you have some of them that are discussions, not really things that need to be addressed, and things that you might not even want to close because you want to discuss them or continue. And they are not all bugs, they are not all things that need to be fixed, but they all add to the same list. That's a problem. We have the flags, well, a little, but that is also an issue. We time the number of issues grows. Well, I've seen projects where they have thousands. And I don't think they will never address thousands of issues.
No,
but
I agree.
They are just not things that you will look at. Shall I close this only to lower the number? Well, maybe someday, but it's also a problem of the organization. They should have a way to us for isolate or put tabs or something by categories. That would be easier for us to really have go down to the 20 or 30, because of all those 170, would be about 20 or something that we can decide and close and fix.
Yeah, it would be nice if those prioritization, or you could give some sort of urgency number or some sort of indication, you know, so that the most important, highly ranked one were sorted first somehow. And the ones that are, you know, that's a nice thing. We eventually will get to that. It's just 174. It's not super critical, and you have to find it. And I guess there's no way to do that because this thing is not sorted on the issue. Well, let's see, what can we sort the issues on? We can sort it on this filters, but I'm not sure if you can sort it, you know, on, there's no numerical value, right?
No,
don't you know any way we can sort this on any things? I guess not. Sort newest, oldest, most commented, least commented, recently updated, most reactions. Okay, I guess, you know, if you added enough thumbs up, it could be sorted on thumbs up, you know, or we can decide on some symbol that's real, you know. I guess there's that. We can't add a new function to GitHub, I think, but we can maybe use some of these things.
So we can have thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
So that could be done as part of the triage where we're going through, if there's an issue that is not obviously supposed to be closed, we can have like a little vote.
Yeah. That's a good idea. That's built in.
And
That's
have
kind of
it
like Stack Overflow, you know, you just vote things up or down depending of importance. Yeah, maybe we should get in the habit of doing that, and I guess bugs should have high priority, you know, versus, you know, various features.
Another thing we can try to do better is have the we can have more issue templates. So when you create, when you click to create a new issue, we could have more subcategories, or if it's a bug report, we can tell the template to automatically add a particular label.
Okay.
So that might help. If the templates all have some sort of label, then that can kind of help if people are actually using the templates. And it is easier to use the templates because you have to click on like open a blank issue, a tiny little link in the bottom if you don't want to use it. So most people wouldn't think to do it.
No, I agree with that. If the bug report, so we have a template for bug report, it should set a label bug or something like that right away. It shouldn't be something you have to also drag in, because, you know, I must say sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just seems like busy work, right? But if you can automate that somehow, then at least all the bug reports will be flagged bugs, and you can sort on bugs. You know, that will be very helpful. Because I figured different people may want to address different kinds of issues, right? So I'm probably doing a lot of bug reports. I've been doing that, but I'm clearly running up against my limit if I can't find them in the 176 long list and feature requests. Some of them are from, you know, are quite complicated to do, and others are very simple. Some involve just adding a file, others require, it's just not possible kind of stuff. And then it's a very different category. So yeah, maybe that's a downvote can be used for that stuff. Okay, so that's a reasonable solution to use that system a little bit better. Let's see. Now I lost my track of where here we go. Sorry. Too many windows open. Okay. So yeah, so that's so I encourage you guys to do that too, and then I'll look at if you personally have posted something on the issue, go have a look at them and see if they're should be uploaded or tags should be applied to them and so on. So the social media issue came up a couple of times. As come up before, it came up a long time ago, but it's still sort of we don't have a Twitter account, we don't have Instagram, all that stuff. I do have a Gmail account called genericmappingtools@gmail.com, which is what I used for YouTube. And we talked about, there was something mentioned about having an email account we can use for that kind of thing. Is that suitable, Leo, or do we have to create another one with, because at some point it's an owner of the account, right?
Right. So this is a bit of a problem with because in order to create accounts in all these things, you need a separate email, right? So so I can't use my personal email to create another Twitter account unless, so I can only have one account per email.
Yeah.
And there's other things for which we might want to use an email like this as well. So we were talking about who owns the domain names as well, and that's going to come up later.
Yep.
But having an account on the domain registrar with this email, that makes it easier for us to share the account.
Yeah.
So if this account is going to be used for more purposes, then it might be better to have for other people to have access to this account.
Yeah.
Right. So if it's going to be the kind of the key for the domains and the Twitter account and the Instagram account and the YouTube account, then it might be good to have at least 2 or 3 people who can access it.
Yeah. Right. I agree. So do you think?
Yeah. May I interrupt at this point? I think it's a good idea to have different accounts, different email accounts for different roles. Basically, you have like an administrator who owns the domain and all that stuff. You have like a social media team, let's say Megan and Esteban or whoever, Federico, sorry. And so you can keep those apart, because if I'm part of the social media team, there's nothing to gain from if I had access to all the stuff concerning the domain, basically.
Yeah, it's certainly true if we grow the organization and suddenly we have many larger groups of doing things, that we don't want 10 people or 15 people who have full access to everything. It's probably problematic too in its own right. But right now we're kind of small, I guess. So we do have the generic mapping tools gmail.com. that I only use for YouTube. And, it's amazing. I get a couple of 3, 4, 5 emails each day now by so-and-so has signed up for your channel. And it's like, who are these people? They're all foreigners who have crazy comments. Like, this must be trolling YouTube and finding stuff and clicking on it. It's amazing. But we have like 600 subscribers now or something like that. It's just, and it's, I don't feel great about, about it. It's very strange. All right, so what's the action item here, guys? Did we use that account?
So I kind of, I mean, I agree with Christoph in, like, the paranoid in me agrees with Christoph. But I think the problem we have right now is that there's maybe too many accounts for too few people. And one of the problems we're trying to solve is to not have one person be the single point of failure for a system. Yeah. So if we have a separate account, I think realistically, we're probably only going to have 1 or 2 people doing Twitter, 1 or 2 people maybe in Instagram if we're lucky. Yeah. So then that kind of duplicates the number of emails that we have to maintain as well and keep track. Yeah. And as these people come and go, then it would be easy to, certainly we lose access to the Gmail, to the email account that gives us access to our Twitter. So I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah. Now we're still too small, I guess, for this to be a problem yet. And if it's a good problem to have, I guess, if we had 25 people who are really involved, then we will definitely go with Christoph's solution. I think we don't want 25 people on everything. But for now, we can. I mean, right now we have nothing, right? I mean, it's like we're starting out in the sense on this. So maybe it's okay to just have 1 for now, and then we'll deal with proliferation if it's too many.
And also, we don't need to have everyone have access to this account. You could have maybe 1 or 2 managers for the email account, and then you could set up forwards of emails to the people who are managing the other accounts. Because you need the email mostly to get like the verification of the account, or like reset a password or something. Right. So a email forward could work there.
So I'm a dinosaur who doesn't know anything about Twitter or Instagram.
You are not the only one.
I should not be the one setting that up. Put it that way. So,
as an employee, I can be assigned things, but I have to admit that of all the tasks, this is probably the one I would be least well suited for. I am a dinosaur in disguise, I guess.
I don't understand how people find things. I just don't understand how it works. Well, I understand that you tweet, that you put things, but how do you find things? There are billions of images, there are billions of messages. How do people find them? I don't understand that.
Yeah, so you don't sound like a candidate either, actually.
It's mostly
that's the part that I don't understand how it works. So you create something, and well, but it will be random, guys. Oh, I like this picture, and they click a thumbs up. I don't understand that part. And well, I'm not against, but I'd say that random publicity, I don't know if it's really useful or not, but I'm saying, I'm like you, dinosaur, I don't really care much about the whole thing.
Yeah. So we have some experience in the department. The department has an Instagram account and a Twitter account and stuff like that. And Ken Rubin is the guy who sort of runs our social media stuff. And I would say 95%, no, that's not true. 90% of the faculty are dinosaurs, and they're counted on to provide material, but they don't, right? So we set these things up, and it becomes like, unless Ken posts all the time, then there are hardly any other posts because people are just not in that sphere at all. So we can create the GMT Twitter and Instagram account, but then we got to feed it, right?
I wouldn't mind doing the Twitter, but I don't have Instagram. I tried to create an account once, and they said that I violated their terms of service. So they wouldn't let me create the account.
Okay, what'd you do?
I don't know. I don't have an account. I don't know how I can violate terms of service without having an account, but
because you already had another account with that email.
That's another Leo you had out there. That's just a bad guy. It's like Walter Smith. There's another Walter Smith that's on the no-fly list. Walter tells these stories when he flies and has to explain that he's not the other guy.
The other guy, yes.
Well, I think we could be okay with just a Twitter account to start and expand to Instagram after, but it might be beneficial to not jump too far into the deep end in social media.
Yeah. That's a good plan. We can start a little bit. So Leo, should I share with you the information about the generic mapping tools.gmail account? Is that, and then we start from that one? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you use one password?
Yes, I use 1Password.
Right. So I have that as well. So can you? Is there a way to share passwords that way?
Yeah, we can set up. Well, I have a family account, and I share with we have different kinds of subgroups with the different family members and things. I can look into that.
You have to be a family.
No, I mean, like, is there a way to share like just that one single password with one?
Yeah, I think there is probably an secure export or something. I'll look at that. So we'll get it to you. I'm not going to email it to you. So
right, and then I'll Megan, do you already have a Twitter account?
I started one on Tuesday, I think, to keep up with GMT. So I can learn.
Yeah. So what I can do is there's Twitter has a service called TweetDeck.
Yeah.
And that lets you add managers to accounts without having to give them the account password or something like that.
Oh, convenient.
So
okay.
I can add you that way, or I can share with you the password somehow. We can.
Okay, sounds good. We can coordinate on that separately.
Yeah, I'll be watching, and maybe I'll post too eventually. But for now, I'll just let you guys start with that. Okay, so I'll get that to Leo, and we'll have an action item there. Next item, so Instagram, we take a pause on. Slack, we talked about Slack last time, and we haven't moved to Slack, but I think now it's a bit more urgent that at least Megan and I can send some Slack messages back and forth. And we talked about repurposing the old, the GMT Navco Slack channel. Is that still a viable solution, Leo, or should we just create another thing? Okay. So is that something you can take an action item on? I'm not sure. Did we delete people that are on it because all those students who signed up? Or we don't really want to get feedback from those. We get reactivating some person in Uzbekistan suddenly get very excited and start to post GMT questions on the Slack channel.
So yeah, I think I can kick everyone out.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think anyone expects that to be alive anymore.
Yeah. So are we keeping this to the core team, or are we letting people, other people in?
I don't mind a broader, it seems like it'll be sort of, well, of course, there will be a lot of personal direct messages between people too. That's, I'm not going to send it to the whole group, but yeah, so maybe it's okay that any of the people like on this call could happily subscribe to this thing if they want to.
Because we can also have private groups that are invitation only. Okay. Like we had for the UNAVCO, I think we had an instructors chat that was only for us.
Yeah.
Right,
that's probably helpful to have some mechanism to just send it to the core people and not, clog the channels for other people. And maybe there's some proprietary information we don't want everybody to see. I don't know what that is, but who knows? Bad jokes or something. Leak out. I only know bad jokes. You know that. Okay, so we'll try to get that Slack channel repurposed. We'll give it a test. Okay, the themes. All right, so this is a recurring theme of the agenda, is that we talked about last time that we need to make some examples of the different themes so we can sort of vote with our eyes and look at the differences and maybe have a little Google form to vote among us to sort of decide on, because you're not going to agree on everything, right? I mean, fonts and pen thicknesses and all that stuff, people have their tastes. But it sort of came down to, we need to set up a web page or some place where we can post a bunch of examples and look at the stuff. And I've just been swamped being in the basement doing C stuff. So I can't also take that on. So I'm gonna need help to run some theme tests, I guess, and post the results of that. And because we have an employee now, so that it might be easier to do. But what this is, Megan, is that we have something called GMT Themes, which is a new feature. Think of it as a collection of GMT default settings,
right?
Which it is, right? So we have a theme called Modern, and we wanted to, break up the old stale GMT black and white frames from 1988 that we had since then, and do something different in GMT modern mode, and make the GMT modern theme the default theme in 6.2 modern mode. But no, what is the theme? So we have, so Christoph was involved in that, and I a little bit, and we hacked back and forth and made a few themes, and there's a branch called GMT Theme that has that installed. And then it's sort of been dormant since the summer, I think, in terms of working on that. So how do we, how many figures do we need to see? And where do we post them? Do we just make this an issue page and post a whole bunch of stuff? That's easy.
Yeah, I think an issue would be one option, and we could make use of the thumbs up, thumbs down feature. Another, I think a web page is over amount of work for this particular purpose, but a Google survey might be a good option, and we could post that to the new Twitter, which might get more non-developer input. Yeah, as these are, maybe most of the developers would develop their custom themes anyways and wouldn't necessarily use the defaults quite as much. So we could post it to that Twitter account and then also the forum.
That's good, yeah. So I guess we will just need to come up with a reasonably small subset of plots, classic modern kind of thing, so people can see what it affects. Because, most plots will look very similar when the same theme setting. Right. It's mostly it's not true. It mostly affects the fancy geographic frames, right? They go away and become more modern. For the Cartesian, it's less obvious, but it's certainly, this is, again, these things are up for debate. How long should the ticks be? It gets into the weeds, right? How long should the ticks be? I've shrunk the ticks a little bit. The gaps between ticks and annotation, I shrunk that a little bit to make it a little more compact. And then the fonts themselves is endless discussion.
Yeah, I could try to throw together what I would see the survey as, and then get your feedback before we make it public. One question I had was in the GitHub issues, there were 4 different themes, but in this conversation, you've mostly mentioned classic and modern. So do you see the issues talking on those 4 that were originally posed for 6.2, or the full, or just the 2?
It's a good question. I think I only made 2. We only looked at classic and modern themes. And then there was a few other ones I threw in there that I didn't, it was like dark mode and, I'm not even sure if it really is a good dark mode. Sorry, if you forgot. There was no bell that rang many times. If you ring the doorbell once and I don't hear it, then, you're standing out there. So sorry about that.
Overslept a bit.
We got a better time for you now, right? A little bit. still early in New Zealand. Yeah, so I must admit, I haven't looked at the themes recently in detail, how many I put in, but it was like an inverse and dark mode, and then modern and classic. And the other ones we can sort of play around with. That it's less critical, but the modern classic's going to be sort of what we had in the classic style. But modern is the one I think we should make sure we have a good set of parameters for.
Okay, the other, from reading through what's been thought about before, I think that the documentation about how to create your own and the instructions for a custom theme are something that should really be included when themes are released.
Yep, absolutely. So that's a cookbook, and also it gets into the documentation layout things that we also have, which is not on the agenda, but that's sort of a perennial issue of revamp the whole documentation.
I think one of the ideas behind the themes thing was that you can basically share like a subset of information, like you have a journal which requires some special style, and you can easily basically share that style with another person.
Yeah.
Besides the new modern look of GMT. So yeah, I could contribute to that as a start.
Yeah, it used to be like, back in the typesetting days, that was very specific information on figures at AGU, had to be this and that, and size and 8 centimeter wide and all that stuff. And a lot of things went by the wayside with digital, where really it's much less oversight. It seems it's like it's all on you to do anything. There used to be copy editors in the olden days. You hardly ever see anyone do anything now. This is my experience. It just slips through. Okay, so there's a path forward on themes, which is good. CPTs. Okay, so Federico made a point of this. There's things like the geologic timescale has official color tables, and should we support them? And they have CPTs. So I think in general, since GMT is generic mapping tools, we are careful not to adding too much material that are specific, right? So most of the color tables we have are sort of, can be used for anything. So I think for geologic timescale, that's very suitable to add through the cache. It can be a remote file, and we can have them that way, but I wouldn't add them to the GMT core CPTs, because I think then they get into trouble with, what about meteorologists? They want to have this, cloud colors, or I'm sure something like that. And then it gets very complicated to police. So I think the cache is good for that, because if no one hears about it, then they can't find it. So there has to be a mechanism where you can discover that there are stuff in the cache. And I think right now, the cache is just an unknown wasteland of files that are used by tests and some examples. And there's hundreds of them, and there's small things. We didn't really think through of publishing these things. But those CPTs would be sort of a different thing, where they are generally useful, not just used for example 42 or some tests, but we want people to actually find these. So that's going to require some sort of either restructuring of how we deal the remote files. So any thoughts on that? I mean, this is different from grids, right? But that's a different data file.
I look at the link that Rico sent. Well, I didn't understand very well what that CPT, because you have colors, but they are tied to geological scale. If you take out the words of the geological scale, what is left from to make a color table out of that? That's the part I did not get.
I did click on the link. I got that far.
You see lots of colors. They are nice, but they have all the labels, all the geological scale. But if you take out the geological scale, I had some troubles imagining what would be a CPT out of those colors.
I didn't look at all Christian's stuff on this thing, but I assume this is a CPT that has geologic age and these colors for the different slices. But there might be different zoom levels or something that, it can get very detailed. Let's see what he did here. I can find them.
Well, I look at the PDF link that had the geological scale, all the geological timetable with the colors. That's when I feel, okay, I take out the text. How would this be useful?
The CPTs, the colors are dependent on the ages. So one could use these CPTs to use that color, that table, based on the age of the rocks or the units. That's the idea.
Yeah, and the be sort of standardized using the standard color for these geologic epochs, right?
It would be a non-master CPT to be used.
Yeah, it would be not in the list. So, but it's okay. So talk about CPTs in general. So we supply a whole bunch now because we included all the Fabio's somewhat repetitive color schemes, but it's a lot of them, right? Plus the ones we had. And then we have some links to CPT City, which has tons of other CPTs. We also have a link to Fabio's place, but we have those things there. And presumably there are other CPTs out there, and we don't want to type GMT make CPT and see 2,000 entries, right? It's not helpful. So how can we convey the idea that there's more CPTs out there? We can certainly give links to these things, add that as another example. But if we want them to be available in GMT in that format, then we will have to put them somewhere, and that's where I mentioned the cache, but then it has to be advertised somehow in a documentation we have a link to a page where we say these are cache files that are more useful. And that's, it makes it more general, and it could be other files that are useful. Right now, there are things like, plate boundaries. They're in the cache. A lot of people like to plot plate boundaries, but there's no mention of these things. Right? It just, you stumble upon some example that happens to use trench.txt, and you get curious. So one point I don't want to be, once I don't want to be a curator of all these kinds of files. Something now is our job to maintain these files. You're going to get emails saying, hey, your trench file is wrong in Sumatra. It's like, I don't want to deal with that. So it's a little problematic when you start taking on these things, but I'm certainly okay with providing links to the geologic timescales where we mention CPT city and all that stuff.
Could we have then a clearer separation between the data sets that we do support and the ones that are just used in the documentation as sample data? So maybe renaming them to sample something, so that people don't try to use them for actual research. Right? Yeah. And then if it's at Earth Relief, that's clearly supported, but then why is that supported and at trenches is not supported?
Yeah.
Right. So if we just call them like sample trenches or something like that, then it's a little bit clearer that, yeah, this is like a teaching example. This is not, we're not supporting, like this is not a file that's maintained. So
yeah, I've done some of that. There are files called example09.txt or something like that, right? It's just clearly just use example 9. But then there are these files that are used several places, and some of them are sort of valid data sets, but don't really want to be the maintainer of them because they're not our data. I just got it from Peter Bird or something like that made a bunch of files. So there's hundreds of files with all kinds of crazy names. There's no system whatsoever apart from a few that are called example something, I think. So that probably needs some looking at to decide what to do with the future of the cache. Is it supposed to grow indefinitely? What are we offering? So I think my thought was that these are things that it's just sort of a black box thing that we use for our tests, not clutter up our repo, but not really meant for users to find necessarily beyond the little snippets of code on the example page. So yeah, it's a slippery slope if you start letting real data files in there that we advertise beyond the grids.
So just back to like the CPT stuff. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking of putting it in the cache, would there be something like you can make CPT at Rainbow something? Was that sort of the idea of putting it in the cache? Or?
Yeah, so if it was in the cache, you would say, GMT makes CPT minus C at, age color table.cpt, whatever we call that file. And then it pulls it copies it over to your place, and then you can use it. Kind of like the grids work, right? It's just a magic URL that it knows where things are.
The geologic time scale, I think the maybe best solution for that specific example would, if it doesn't already exist, would be to contribute it to CPT City instead of hosting it ourselves, and then add a doc example on how to build a color map, even with that particular case in our documentation. And then we won't be hosting anything. And CPT City already is where people usually go to find color maps that aren't in GMT. So it sort of makes sense.
Yeah, so we used to have email with that guy, JJ Green, I think his name is, that maintained that site. This is 10 years old information, but he's probably still involved, or someone is involved that we can contact and see if this is something they're interested in, what's their policy on adding new stuff, I guess. Yeah, Leo.
By the way, does that CPT exist already? In another format, probably?
It's possible.
Is there any way that we could have the remote files system in GMT get things from CPT City without having to put like the URL? So if we could do like @CPT city and then the name of the color map, if there's an API or if the download URLs are structured somehow, we could like swap CPT city for the proper download URL, put in the color bar, the color scale name, and then have that download automatically. That would be one way of supporting whatever color map you want without us having to maintain them.
Right. So we need to discover that this file is not our file, but and in fact it is somewhere else. So how do we?
That's why I mentioned like doing @CPT city : something.
Okay. Okay. I see. Yeah. Yeah. And then we know what that means.
With,
It would rely on them not changing their website
URL,
structure, right?
Yeah. 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 And we could do this, Leo, but then I can imagine other things like that also might become a big job to maintain a whole bunch of link information that could change from time to time.
My experience with CPTs is more you have, more use always the same.
Yeah, yes. Rainbow. Woo! What else is there?
Yeah. Okay, rainbow. That's not something you should put many effort on, because really there are an endless number of CPTs. If you want, we already offer an infinite number because you can scale them and then put the inch. So we already offer a lot of them. If someone wants still another one, we have links where people can do that. I don't think that's something we should put much effort on.
No, okay. So I mean,
it's
kind of biased. We're biased here, right? Most of us are geoscientists, so geologic timescale is something we all understand. Why
yes, I like the colors. I mean, I just did not understand how it would work. There is, for example, there is the magnetic, the one I use.
Yeah, right.
It's there. I wouldn't mind to have the geological time scale in there. I just did not understand well how it worked. I think it's geological CPT is not at the same level as the other thousands of equal CPTs that we found in those places.
Yeah.
So, well, I think if the file exists, is already made, I think we can add it. No, I see no problem with that. And it's something that, it can interest a substantial part of our user base. Even it is, we can call it generic geological.
Generic timescale, because there is one already with the default CPT for the crustal age grids from Dietmar's group.
Yes, and there is the magnetic.
Yes, and there's the magnetic. So we're not truthful to our principles.
So
yeah,
not very stick to those things. If you find it useful, okay, fine. But imagining things that we are not going to do anytime soon with CPTs, I don't think it's really.
Yeah. Federico, are there a certain number of CPTs that they have created or Christian has created that depends on how close you want to go to the the subcrons and stuff, or is it just one giant CPT that has everything?
No, I think there is 3 or 4.
Yeah,
just 3 or 4, no more.
Okay, so
for the yes.
Yeah, because I imagine if you want to show everything since the Precambrian, that's a different color table than if you're just going to look at a few 100,000 years in the Albion or something like that. You're just going to be different. That's a zoom level in a sense. So I can see why they need different ones. All right, I guess we'll think about that a little bit. If Federico wants to make a couple of plots showing the different ones might be helpful, and if they're all available, it might not be such a bad thing to put some in there. But I think the wider question of our cache is still it's the bigger issue, what to do with that mechanism. All right, I'm trying to stay on time here, and because we can't do it all day.
Just one quick point about that. So I was looking at the Bitbucket repository where these CPTs are, and there's a large citations for the color maps but no license information. I think that's going to be something we have to consider carefully if we cache these color maps is how to store the appropriate metadata so people cite them properly.
Yes, if you store them, yes. That's a good point. I mean, with Fabio's things, we've worked with Fabio. It's okay. We give him credit. There's references, all that stuff. But yeah, if we just link to things, then it's a different matter, especially if we don't give any attribution. I want to talk about the data mirrors. So the last couple of weeks, we've gotten 5 new mirrors up, and they all seem to be working. We're still waiting for UNAVCO to move on this. It's been that's the first one I contacted back in God knows March, April, and they need a lot of pinging. But Walter helped get the NOAA one upline, and old contacts in Brazil and Eder helped to get the Brazil mirror. We had a long-standing South Africa mirror, and the guy who started that I think is retired. I can't find him, but the IT person is all fine with this, so they set that up. Singapore had already set one up without asking anything. We just found out from posting on the forum. So I'm sort of asked them to make it formal. And what else do we have? Australia, so DSmart's group are doing it also for Australia. And I took the liberty of renaming Joachim's Europe to Portugal, but I left the Europe link in there, so it should all be backwards compatible. And I spelled Brazil 2 different ways because it wasn't entirely clear. so there's that.
It's very clear, Paul. It's with an S.
Exactly. That's how I grew up, you know, with Norwegian spelling. They don't impose new spellings on things.
We still have flights on the roads with old way of writing, and several of them are the same case, S or a Z. But I think it was the old way with a Z was the old name, but from under Dios or something, it's with an S.
So I don't know if you feel, you know, do we need to go out and beat on doors to get more mirrors added? You know, in the old days, we've tried to get sort of geographic spread, you know, and where the users are. So I can imagine we could try to get some Japanese organization to add a Japan mirror, because there's thousands of people in Japan using GMT. So that might be helpful for them, you know, find someone there. In Europe, it's only Joachim right now, Portugal. I don't know what's a good entity. I mean, it used to be Oslo, but they've given up on that. So they're not going to do anything for me. But it seems like it's...
Also, we have, Claudio. Claudio is at IPGP in Paris. They might be interested.
Yeah, the French could possibly be convinced into that.
Yeah.
IPGP could do that.
And they are users. There are many users at IPGP.
And I thought Remco's, you know,
that's why I started using GMT.
Maybe EUMETSAT. I don't know if EUMETSAT is using much GMT. If it's just Remco is happen to be working there, you know. So, but it's best if you can find some sort of large organization to take it on versus, you know, some faculty member who happens to be at some university now, but then in a few years they move and then it just falls apart. So that's why I want NOAA and UNAVCO to sort of do it. Hopefully it can be a little bit longer lived, you know. But we have a mix of that. We have individuals. So if you have any suggestions, you know, let me know. Or if you have some contacts, you can just point them to the Mirror site. It has all the information. And then I just need to add the hover forward, which we're starting to understand how it works better now. So it has to be an HTTP to their thing, which can be HTTPS, and it flips automatically. So all that works pretty good. And yesterday I changed how we do the GMT data server setting. We don't have to spell out the URL. You can just say, you know, Oceania or Portugal or NOAA, and it creates the URL because they're all the same. Right, genericmappingtools.org and stuff like that. So that makes it a little easier to switch. If you want to switch to from your dead mirror to another one, you just use that. That seems to work. Anything else on mirrors? I guess this works pretty well, I think. It should be very helpful for people who don't have to download from Hawaii to Africa. It takes a long time. Bus factors. So Dongdong set up a nice repo for the bus factors so we can see what are they for the various things. And the two that stand out is the GMT FTP site. It's just me right now, because that can become Megan also because she has a UH account. But it's just me now and put stuff up there. And then there's the RPM repo, which I think is just Dong Dong is doing.
Yeah.
You know, so, and then I guess we'll add Twitter accounts and stuff to that page, and then we'll see if there are other things, social media stuff. But that's useful to have a little, that's a private repo, I think. So just people on it can see it. And we can sort of work towards, you know, increasing those buzz factors wherever we can. Let's see. So that's the end of the official agenda. If anyone wants to bring up non-listed items, this is a good time to do it.
I have a question that relates back to the NASA proposal and also Slack. I had some specific questions, and this might not be the time to go over that because we don't have all that. I'm not sure how much time people have, but I was wondering if it would be possible to set up a Slack channel specific to that proposal where we can talk about ideas and improvements.
Yeah, I think
Thanks.
so. That's just adding a channel under the workspace, right, Leo?
Yeah, that's pretty easy to do. So yeah, we can make it private or public. It does. That I guess doesn't matter too much.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I also had a question about the philosophy around releases. And so on the GitHub repository, there are milestones associated with the 6.2 release. And I'm wondering how it's decided which milestones are the hold off the timing of a release versus which ones are postponed for the next one.
Yeah, excellent question. I don't think we have a great answer to this.
You witness an attempt for 6.2. That's how we work. Everything that is ready, that we consider ready, goes to the next release.
Okay.
There are things that we're trailing for a previous one. I'm thinking my branch that I work on it on bits and never finished of the shake map.
Yeah, right.
But otherwise, everything, for example, it's there for 1 or 2 releases already. But normally, as long as we have something finished, it goes to the release.
Yeah, we had discussions over the years on this thing. Should we have lots of 6.1 branches that keeps going into the future with just bug fixes for a long time versus having master? And at some point, it just becomes too much work to have too many official branches, I guess, out there. So we sort of retreat a little bit back, and we will release 6.2, and there might be a 6.2.1 bug fix depending, right? But it's not necessarily going to be that way. It depends on what we find. So we did 6.1 and 6.1.1. Right, but then there won't be anything further there. There'll be 6.2.0 coming out at some point, and then we'll see where we take it from there. But yeah, the cutoff is always very, very elastic.
Okay.
That way, it's we change our mind depending on how much work it may require, and we want it to get out. We don't really want to. We talked about having 2 releases a year, sort of official pace, I think.
And I think we should release 6.2 relatively soon. We have a lot of things fixed.
Yeah. So there's that, because some people don't get any new. They're not building from source. They're waiting for these things to come out.
Yes.
And we have fixed stuff a long time ago, and it just drags out. And
yeah, I would say even most people are not building from source.
Yeah. So we want to get more often, and almost like we should almost do like clockwork. If you do every 6 months, that's not a bad release schedule. But we can't be tied down to a specific date, I think. I guess we could. I mean, we just have to have more self-discipline. If you decided, November 1st and May 1st or some arbitrary dates, and then we will know. I mean, there's some benefits to having that, concrete. But I'm sure we're going to argue about extending it another couple of weeks because we're almost ready with something. But yeah, so that's where we are. So it sounds like we're going to push 6.2.0 into 2021, I think, unless magically we will wrap up a few big issues like the themes and the data cube and all that stuff. I didn't bring up the whole issue of documentation and redo the whole documentation pages. And, we talked about this many times, make them a little bit more like Matplotlib in terms of how do you do certain things. and not having these gigantic showcase examples, the 50-ish examples, which are more demonstrating what GMT can do versus, being useful for rookies to learn how to do things, right? They're just too big. Many of them are. So, and we haven't moved on that yet, but we should maybe next session we should talk more about revamping the documentation, or at least get some plans on how to do that, because otherwise we won't move on it. It's a big job. So maybe we can think about that for the next meeting, or make that an agenda item. What the next documentation will look like.
Yeah, and I could share something in advance of that meeting as kind of a discussion point, so that people can disagree however they want, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, that'd be great. And also we can hook this together with our efforts to do some workshops and tutorials. I do think we should do some online Zoom workshops. Not wait necessarily to next summer, but maybe when 6.2 comes out, we could try to make a short workshop for GMT users and see what happens, and sort of test run our new tutorial, whatever we think is the framework for that workshop. And the other thing I mentioned to Megan was we should try to define what a developer workshop might be in the Zoom era. Is it a hackathon, or is it just sort of very specific onboarding someone who wants to learn enough to actually contribute? Because we gotten patches from people who clearly can do C programming. We should grab those guys, gals, and say, hey, in March we're going to have this, 2-day onboarding for new GMT developers. We want to, are you interested? That kind of stuff. Because we're not going to have thousands of these people around. I think a user workshop is easy to fill up with random folks, but the developer one might be, a small exclusive group that you might have to recruit specifically. Those who have published patches, for instance. I
think we could also do separate developer coding and documentation contribution workshops.
Yeah. We shouldn't all focus just about the core C stuff, because I think that's the hardest part to find people. We can definitely get contributors from to do other things. So that'd be great. I think that's a good structure.
Just one thing about the documentation. I'm still hesitant if it's a good idea to put figures on the main pages. For one reason, they are big, there are many. If we start adding images to there, they will grow 2 or 3 times bigger in size. I clearly prefer the situations where you have the images and the showcases and the scripts actually to do stuff. Well, it's nice on the page to have an image when you have a particular doubt. But if you start adding, imagine 3-4 images per main page.
Yeah.
And make them very big. It's good, but it has a price. That's my hesitation about that. Just
So, Joachim, I understand your point here. However, for me, the language barrier is quite high. The main pages are very condensed in their wording, which conveys the information. But if you're non-native English speaker or your level of English is not that good, it gets quite difficult to understand the main page. And there, an example in my eyes is quite helpful, actually. But as your point, maybe it's a good idea to have a separate example page for every main page, where you can go through the commands you can showcase there.
I agree fully. I was the one that, and then I didn't pursue it, push it, that the examples per options. There is only 1 or 2 cases in one of the where you have, because there was a time I tried to start that. Examples per options. Even each option would be good to have an example. I understand you perfectly. I agree. The thing is, I doubt that we should put everything in those pages. Otherwise, each one will grow to be a book. Just
it's a good thought. I mean, I think this is why we should have a full session dedicated to documentation. I think because there's so many aspects to what is this, right? You sort of pointing toward bandwidth issues, right? Really size and bandwidth issues.
And all of, yes, all of
right. And
installers, and installers get bigger because they come with the documentation, all of that.
The bundles and the Win installers, that, yeah. We can of course decouple that, but yeah, no, there's many aspects of documentation, not just the layout and what we want to achieve there, but the content and also the size and how it's distributed. Let's save that discussion for the December meeting. And I think I had a tentative date for. Did I post that somewhere? I know I posted it somewhere. It's like a month from today. Is that likely to work?
Yeah, I think you said the 17th.
Yeah, is that likely to work for people? I mean, I have no idea what happens on the 17th, but I assume that's a Thursday and it's not quite Christmas and nothing's going on and we're still hunkered down inside, just like we are right now. So, okay, so we'll make that the date, and then we'll work on an agenda towards that deals with probably documentation issues in all its glory. Yeah.
Could I suggest that we keep the agenda in this document? So as you populate the agenda, just like do it in this document, because then we don't have to copy and paste. And that way, if other people have something they think of, they can we can always just come to this particular document.
That's great, yeah, because I must say, Wednesday comes, or Tuesday comes, and I say, oh, gee, I should make an agenda. It's not a good frame of mind to make sure I cover everything. So I thought at least I had a long list this time, but it's usually being too much of an afterthought than a thoughtful list of things. So this particular file lives in the GMT Google Docs folder?
Yeah. Okay. So this is in GMT under Community Meetings, and then this is GMT Community Meetings 2020.
And there is a link in the forum for each one of them. Yeah, that's what I resort to.
So it's all the same. So last time I was stupid and I started a different document because I forgot we had this one.
Yeah, right.
But I think it's easier if we just keep it all in the same, and then it's just one link.
Yeah, oh, that is great. Yeah, so I forgot too, right? I'm looking at it now, but that's good. So everybody knows that. And of course, not all of the people on the call have access to this particular folder. So we may want to, there's no reason to hide any of those things, but the other stuff in that folder that probably shouldn't be common. So we may have to worry about what should be open or not there. So right now it's just the core developers, I think, who have access to this folder.
This particular document, I made it so that anyone with the link can edit.
Okay.
So that everyone in the call could edit. And
that's great.
Yeah, I think that's probably not a big deal.
No, that's fine. I agree with that. I should look through in that folder in general if there's something that shouldn't be in the folder. I think we pruned everything. Hopefully not comments on, the postdoc interviews should not be in there for stuff like that.
No one wants to see that.
No, we don't want to do that, so that's all taken out. That was somewhere else. Okay, that's all I got, I think. We've been at it for an hour and 10 minutes. That's probably the length. We shouldn't go too longer than that. So unless anyone has any last final words, we will click the end button. I will process the video and post it up as before. I learned that, I don't know if we can change this setting, but because I have a 4K screen, I'm getting a 4K recording, which takes a little while to crash down to HD with Handbrake. So it'll take a few hours before I post it. But I don't know. I think it's just a screen save, right? So I can't change that setting without getting another monitor for this thing. So it is what it is. It's very high resolution, though. I'm just not going to post it. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week. We'll see you on GitHub and Slack soon, and maybe Twitter. And and then we'll look forward to the next meeting in a month.
Hey.
Signing off.
See you, everyone.
See you, everybody. Bye.